Welcome to the First Read Ultimate Spider-Man podcast, where we break down Bendis' iconic run on Ultimate Spider-Man, issues 1 through 160, in Earth 1610. I'm Zach.
I'm John. How's it going, Zach?
Good.
How's our technology set up?
Hopefully better this time. This is our second time recording, and listeners, I'm sure you noticed the variant version intro music today, which obviously means you're in for a bonus episode.
Yes. And just like I said last time that we recorded this, the variant theme song kind of fits because we're talking about all these variant Spider-Men.
Oh, yeah. And the style and the atmosphere and the tone of everything maybe changes as they enter new worlds.
Wow,
like
Zach.
The song.
Just like the song.
Yeah. So, of course, that means, like any good Spider-Man podcast, we're going to be talking today about the incredible new movie that just came out. Is it Across the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, we're on the ball here.
Yeah,
what's the name of this movie?
Well, they only changed
this
one
is
word.
This one is Across the Spider-Verse.
I knew that was right, but I still wanted to check.
Yep. Should we, are we going to spoil this thing? I mean, I'm sure we at some point will.
Yeah, how about this? How about right now we give our 60-second non-spoilery reviews for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, and then they can come back and listen to, the rest of the episode where we go into, some spoilery details.
Okay.
So, John, what did you think of it overall?
I thought it was really good. Just like during Guardians, I cried through a lot of it, which doesn't mean it's happy or sad or anything. But, I thought that it was really good. I was pretty into it the entire time. And then maybe one thing I would say is it does end on a bit of a cliffhanger, which I didn't know at all, but it's very much sets up the sequel to itself, which I guess would be the third movie in the trilogy, which I did not know that was going to happen. I kind of thought that we were in for a full-on story. So that, maybe that's one thing to know going into it.
Yeah, they had a lot of world building that they had to set up before they could really get into the meat of the plot. And it was already running so long, they definitely, if they had tried to finish it in this movie, it would have felt very crammed.
Yeah. But still, I thought it was great. Very, and here's one thing that's not a spoiler at all, Zach, but they are in Earth 1610. Did you know this already?
I have some thoughts about that.
Did you learn that watching it? Okay, I'm sure that was one of the things that I wrote down that I'm like, well, we have to, we just have to talk about this because theoretically that means that the universe that we are reading about right now is the same universe that Spider-Verse, the main one, takes place in. That's just a future universe.
Which we know is not the case, though.
Well, time can be in flux, Zach. You don't watch Doctor Who, so you don't understand these things.
Yeah. Maybe it's not that I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just misinformed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I did catch that too, but I have some thoughts. I have problems with it for nerd reasons.
Well, I'll say, to give it a review like we always do, a non-spoiler here, I would say that I would put it at about 87 out of 100 variant Spider-Man.
Yeah, an 87.
Yep.
Okay. I'll just lead with my score. I'd give it a 95 out of 100 variant Spider-Man.
Okay.
It's just
I'm sure you will get my score up by the end of this.
Yeah, I'll convince you. It's just so fun, and the art is so good. And when I say the art is so good, it's not that in the first movie they had one really unique style that they mastered. They have 100 unique styles that they mastered.
Well, even in the first movie, each of the new characters was drawn in their comic was drawn differently. The animation style was different for each of the characters that was in the movie.
Right,
from
but think
different
about
universes.
how much more they had to do that
Yeah.
for this one.
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of just like one character that would be like that, it'd be like the entire scene.
Yeah.
The story was great. The characters, I think, were all really compelling. The thing I was worried about with some of my favorite spider people that were coming into this movie, and we'll get into this later, I was afraid, it'd be so easy to just make them like window dressing. Just make them, hey, look, isn't that quirky? There's this kind of Spider-Man out there. And you certainly get that with some of them, but the ones that I was worried about them just kind of glossing over and, not really making into actual characters, they absolutely didn't do that. So
Yeah.
it gives you a lot of people to kind of enjoy and understand and root for or root against.
Yeah. What did you think of the villain
Okay.
spot? Which I don't think is a spoiler.
I was going to say, there's like maybe 2 villains you could be talking. I guess potentially even 3 or 4
I'm talking about
by the
Spot.
end. Okay. I thought it was cool. They've always kind of treated him like he's this very silly character, and I've always thought his power was like, no, wait, actually, how do you stop him? Like, that guy could be so overpowered. And I think they kind of figured that out in this movie.
Yeah. That's funny because that was one thing that I was thinking during, well, I don't know. I might start getting close to spoilers. It's funny you say silly because one of the things about him was like he seems a bit too silly to be the main villain of the movie, kind of. And
which I wouldn't say he is. He kind of...
Yeah.
Okay, we should probably
shut it off. You guys heard the ratings. If you haven't seen the movie, which I'm sure everybody has at this point, I don't think anyone's going to click on it beyond Across the Spider-Verse podcast review without watching the movie. But okay, I think we can get into it. Where do you want to start?
Well, you were already sharing some thoughts about.
Okay, so at the beginning of the movie, I was like, this guy's a bit silly for me, but then I was also thinking like, boy, but how are they going to stop him? And I was hoping that they would just like, he was going to be like the one that they like dispatch of and it kicks off like the real movie. And then the fact that he did end up being the main villain, like I do find him very compelling, but he does just seem a bit silly to me for like being the main ultimate like villain. Now once he like ascends and he starts getting like angry and kind of all knowing, then it's much cooler.
See, I felt like he could be the main villain for the third movie, which might, position him as like the main villain of the whole story. But I think for the majority of this movie, the conflict was between Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, and Miles. Because Miles is trying to get home and save his dad.
Only at like
and Miguel
the
is
end. Okay.
Right, but at the end of whatever story you're telling, like that's the rising action and the climax. And Spot wasn't.
Action,
Spot wasn't there for. Yes, Spot wasn't there for any of that. He was in the background.
But he was, though, because they were literally like showing videos of him doing the killing, and he was like ascending during all of this, like in the background. Like you're kind of right, but he's in the background, like becoming the like ultimate villain, while Peter and like. I don't think Miguel is necessarily the villain.
I think he's the antagonist.
Because he was like a good guy for most of this movie, and even at the, I don't know. Now we're jumping around. We've never done this before.
Yeah, this is a different format.
Which is fine, but I don't want to lose track of if you're ever talking about something. But I don't like Miguel. was a genuinely good guy, it seemed, to start, and he's like running this supposedly, like good organization that's like trying to do right and like save the multiverse, right? Isn't it gonna all like collapse if they don't do it? So I don't think he's the villain any more than like all of the Spider-Men in that place that are chasing him are villains.
I mean, I think he's interesting. I'd call him maybe an antagonist more than a villain.
Yeah.
But he's definitely the main, most immediate thing that Spider-Man is trying to take on.
It will really depend on what happens in the third movie to see like what type of character he is.
Yeah. It almost felt like, how like the three types of conflict in a story is like man versus self, man versus nature,
man versus technology. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. You added technology.
Okay, yes. Okay.
But this concept, it almost felt like Miguel wasn't a person in the story as much as he was a force of nature. He was a representation of the things you can't change. And that's what Miles was opposed to. And I found that really interesting.
Yeah. So what did you think of this like big Spider-Man organization?
I was fine with it. I was kind of, obviously it was
you
cool.
Have a lot more comic knowledge of
as far as I know, some of those aren't even in the comics. Some of them is just they had freedom to make like, I don't know, a monster truck Spider-Man or whatever they came up with. Some of them did appear. I was happy to see the kitty cat Spider-Man because that was one of my favorites. In the Spider-Verse comic, there was a kitty cat Spider-Man, and I was like, oh, hell yeah. I'm like ride or die for this this Spider-Man. And then awesome. The Inheritors ate its soul and killed it. And it was very sad. And they were like holding it by
cat jumped up in the background while we were talking about Spider-Cat.
Yeah. They were like holding it by the scruff of its neck, and it was just hanging there like a cat does. And it looked like such a cute drawing until you realized what was happening was it was getting killed.
Oh.
So I was glad to see a spider kitty that was thriving here.
Yeah. There were some good ones. I guess more what I meant was, what do you think of this like Spider-Man organization that like knows all about like the canon events of being Spider-Man and just things like that. Yeah. And there's like a million of them.
I think it was really smart, and I think it's very meta because, it kind of organically developed that way where it's like back in the 60s, Stan Lee and, Steve Ditko or Stan Lee and John Romita Jr. Senior, sorry. I need to real quick. I feel bad that I didn't do this earlier. The Spider-Man community is mourning this week. We did lose John Romita Sr., who's probably the most iconic Spider-Man artist of all time. He died at like 93. His son, John Romita Jr., still works for Marvel, is still drawing Spider-Man. They're like the Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Jr. of like comics art. So,
oh, well, that's too bad.
Rest in peace, John Romita.
Yeah.
But what I was saying is like, it started out where you had those original stories and everyone likes them. And then, there's always a new cartoon. There's always a new movie. There's going to be a video game, and they're just drawing from the same things until it did happen like this to where, these stories keep getting retold across multiple iterations.
Yeah.
And I think it was cool to kind of, nod to that.
Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting that Spider-Man has existed for like over 50 years now as kind of the flagship character for Marvel. And here in the last 10 or so years, we've seen what he represents kind of change. And it used to be like Captain Britain was the Marvel multiverse character. That's not the case anymore. Now it's like, you think multiverse, what's one character that epitomizes that? It's Spider-Man. and it gives them the opportunity to make all these other marketable Spider-Man that they can sell.
Yeah.
I just think it's really a cool evolution of the character.
Well, and I was kind of falling down a rabbit hole just before we started recording this about Spider-Man and the multiverse stuff, and I was going to ask you if he always was this, like, there's just like a million variants of Spider-Man, kind of like no other hero, even though there are, there's like a web of life and death. And I was going to ask you about like this person Neath that apparently like creates all the spider totems.
Oh, you got into the totem stuff.
And yeah, well, I saw Spider Totem and I was like, what is that? And then that led me to like Neath, and I'm like, I'll just have to ask Zach if he's ever heard of any of this stuff, which I'm sure he has.
So when I said the Inheritors, you probably were like, oh, I was reading about these guys this morning.
No, I didn't know who that is. I just assume an alien race of some sort.
You remember, like, maybe the first episode we ever did, like the Origins one, when you asked who Morlun is? And you were
I don't remember that, but
you were like, "Is this guy Morbius?"
Oh yeah,
yeah. He's
that's the guy who goes around killing all the Spider-Men.
You literally, yes, he jumps from dimension to dimension and he eats the spider energy.
See, had they made Porter Parker, whatever the bad guy is, had they made him one of like Miguel's right-hand men? Or maybe even like the leader of the
monster Spider-Man.
Yeah, the monster Spider-Man.
Patton Parnell.
Yeah. Okay, well, I do want to learn about Neath later. But we don't have to.
I don't think it matters. I mean it does. It doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't think it's going to come into the movies. I think that
I don't think so
either. It would have made sense for them to go that way, but I think it's pretty clear at this point that that's not the route they're taking.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think about, this is something that I saw that I didn't know this ahead of time, but the 3 Spider-Men in charge of like the multiverse team, Miguel O'Hara, the spider bike lady, what's her name?
Jessica Drew,
and Ben Reilly, who I have the Funko Pop for. They are 3 of the Spider-Men that specifically didn't become Spider-Men through these like canon events. So what does that mean? That's got to be something, right, Zach? They didn't get bit by spiders, basically.
I hear what you're saying, and I would need to think on that to try and figure out if that's intentional, if that means anything. I will say this: the Jessica Drew that we saw in the movie is not like any Jessica Drew we've ever seen in the comics. She's usually not black. I don't know that she's ever been pregnant.
I think, yeah, she is. I saw some stuff about it.
Oh, okay. I don't read too much 616 Jessica Drew stuff. That might have been a spoiler that there's going to be a Jessica Drew in the Ultimate Universe. But
I don't even know.
Yeah, she doesn't normally ride a motorcycle. It seems like that was just a completely new character that they made, and just named Jessica Drew, which I was fine with. So I don't know what her backstory is in the movie.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I think that is probably intentional, and it's gonna like come in. I don't know. I don't like that they're gonna. I hope that they don't start calling Spider-Man like fake Spider-Man. I don't want Miguel to not be a real Spider-Man either.
Right, and I think that was part of what they were trying to get at in this movie, because ever since Miles has been created, there's been like kind of racist nerds who get mad and they're like, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Miles Morales is Miles Morales. And it's like they were trying to go out of their way to say, no, he's Spider-Man too. There can be, multiple people named Spider-Man.
Yeah. So do you like have any opinions on them? Like, I can almost see how like this movie and the plot is like, and it's like against those people specifically.
I think it is. Yeah.
And I don't know. It's great, but you know, why even give those dorks the time of day to like?
Because unfortunately, they're a very vocal and very visible
Because I
segment of
have
the
to
comic fandom.
because that scene where Miguel is just like climbing up the rocket or whatever it is, like screaming at him that like you're not Spider-Man, you don't belong here or something. That is like word for word like comments that you would like read about it, right? Like he's
Yeah.
effectively just being a voice for those people right now. And I don't know, it's like, man, you're all Spider-Man. Just you Miguel seemed to really flip kind of quickly from going to like a good guy to like, oh, he's like not, you know, a good guy at all. But
I mean, I think he always clearly had like shadier intentions, you know, like
yeah.
Unfortunately, that scene on the rocket, I know it was supposed to be powerful. I know it was supposed to, you know, tell us something important. That was one of the points in time where I was shushing teenagers, and I totally missed that scene.
So does Miguel O'Hara have like shadier intentions? Was he being shady? Because all of the other Spider-Men in that place know this is what happens in the canon events. So he's not being shady. He's just informing Miles what happens when you're Spider-Man. And Miles is the one that's like, you know, going against the grain, which you can't like blame him for or anything like that. But that's why I don't know if Miguel O'Hara was really trying to do anything too wrong. He was more just trying to like treat him like an adult, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he sees himself as like a hero, but like the kind of hero that does like a necessary evil. And when I say he was like maybe hiding his intentions or he was shady, I'm talking specifically about 2 Miles, you know, the subject of the movie.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a list. Do you have like a list of things that you want to touch on, or
no? Let's hit your list.
I maybe got a couple here. So, okay, the real life cameos, like the Tobey Maguire scene and the Andrew Garfield scene, like sitting over the police captain or Toby sitting over Uncle Ben. What'd you think?
I loved it. I thought it worked.
Okay.
I mean, if there's going to be different art styles, there can also be like, I mean, at that point,
100%.
Any texture, any color, any kind of visual medium that you can bring in there, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
I even like the Lego thing.
I really liked them, but then, gosh, they just linger so long, I think, you know, especially there's the shot of Andrew Garfield's face. It's like they're holding for applause in the theater, you know, and I'm like, you guys don't have to do this. This is just, you know, just put him up there when you show 15 other pictures and everyone will still see it in the corner and be like, oh my God, it's it. You know, you don't have to like zoom in on his face and be like, so, whatever. It was just kind of like, it was something I would have expected out of the live action Spider-Man movies, which I think are not, you know, I didn't think
they're maybe hokier. They may be more fan service.
Yes,
like
more fan service.
Actual
that's
stories.
Yes, that's a great word. But I still really liked them. I would have done the you know, I would have been psyched. I've been like, oh, that means that these are all canon in the same multiverse and blah 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 blah.
How can you not look for those little breadcrumbs?
Yeah. And then also Childish Gambino, Donald Glover came in as the Prowler.
Yeah, I liked that.
Yeah, that was fun.
I for a second thought about explaining to look at me mansplaining to my wife, but like she doesn't know who that is. She doesn't pay attention to like pop culture stuff like that. And then you know how he even got the Prowler role, right? Is he wanted to play a live action Miles Morales.
Knew that. And I know I know that Miles Morales is like based on like Donald Glover wanting to play Spider-Man. So then they made a black Spider-Man in the comics. Like Donald Glover wanting to play Spider-Man came before Miles Morales was created.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I mean, not, they would have eventually made a Black Spider-Man. The two were probably just similar timelines, but that's one of those things that they're like, Miles Morales is almost made because of Donald Glover. So
Yeah.
So it is kind of cool. You get to see him in the movie, and maybe that is the Donald Glover Prowler from the MCU universe, because
I think that
he
was
does say he has a nephew named Miles in the Spider-Man movies in the MCU.
Yeah, I think so. I think now's a good time for me to jump back to something you were asking about earlier with the Earth 1610 designation.
Oh, yes.
So in my mind, in my understanding of it, if you say
that means the Spider-Man we're reading about right now is dead.
It also means that he would have
the brains out of him.
It also means that he would have been blonde. So clearly, it wasn't super accurate.
That's true.
So, in my mind, when you give a multiversal designation to a certain reality, if you say 616, that's comics. You're not going to be able to adapt that into a different medium and it still exists. You can't have a 616 movies because it's inherently going to break whatever continuity was made in, the comics, because it's going to retell the same story in a different way.
Yeah.
Or it's going to have the characters be different or whatever. But B, it's just the form is the content in a way, like I don't think you could take the Miles Morales from these movies and give an actor to play him in live action and convince anyone that it's the same Miles. It would just feel so clunky,
Yeah.
Even when they jump to different realities, people keep their same like art style, and the live action people are still live action. So it's like you couldn't put...
And no one mentions it or anything.
Right. You couldn't put a live action Andrew Garfield in a 2-dimensional comic book and say, look, it's the same universe.
Yeah. So
I think they put that as like a nod to people like us who see it and are like, oh, 1610. This was the same thing that the Ms. Marvel actress was like fighting Kevin Feige about, because he said at some point in some project that the MCU is Earth 616. And she's
they've said that in the movies multiple times.
Right. And she fought back against it. And she's like, no, we've already been through this. It's Earth 1999999.
And that is what they say in this movie, Across the Spider-Verse. That's what Miguel O'Hara says.
Yes. So this movie simultaneously fixed one of my big multiverse designation problems and broke another one.
Well, I think that these movies, maybe they said it was 1610 in the last one, so then they just had to say it was in this one, because I think what the movies get in trouble doing now that there's so much multiverse stuff is they start the movies, they don't know that they're going to do multiverse stuff, so they start the superhero movies as an adaptation of these comics from Earth 616, but then later on they're like, oh, but we want to do a multiverse stuff and bring in those characters. And now once you start multiverse, now it doesn't make sense that you're Earth 616 anymore, because we know what Earth 616 is. Yeah. Same with like this 1610. But whatever. I liked it. I was like, oh, nice. This is the universe Zach and I are reading about. This will make great pod content.
I feel like anytime you start a new canon or you enter a new medium, it automatically has to have a different number.
Yeah, that's why it would be so easy. I don't know why they choose numbers that are already popular. Or, it's so easy to just choose anything else. Like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, when Christine Palmer from the other Earth, 838, is talking to Doctor Strange, and she's like, you guys are Earth 616. We're Earth 838. Just pick any two other numbers and don't make it a headache for everyone involved. Like,
it's funny because I think they're clearly doing it, trying to like as a nod and a wink to comic fans.
You're messing
who know
it up.
Those numbers, but we're the ones who get the most angry about it.
I know. Yeah. Okay, so what are some other things? Okay, here's one that we might be, since we're talking about different universes. I think that there's some sort of plot hole or something that needs to be explained in the third one about the fact that Miles is supposed to be Spider-Man because the Miles in Universe 42 was about to get bit by Spider-Man. And then since he didn't get bit, he became the Prowler. And the Miles in this universe, his dad is the one that's the police chief. So we could still say, oh, well, he would have died anyways as the police chief, because he just would have been close to Peter Parker Spider-Man. But, that's assuming, because we would assume the police chief dies because he's close to Spider-Man, or we know that, and now he's like Miles' dad. So, and I think he was supposed to be Prowler in this universe, and then he got bit and became Spider-Man. So potentially Earth 42 and Earth 1610 just like flipped exactly what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I think it'd be interesting for them to explore that, but not give us a definitive answer one way or the other, because I think it's narratively, you always, people like to tell stories about, oh, it was their fate. But then also, I think part of the appeal of this movie was he's very defiant against fate. He's like, well, whatever you say, be damned. I am Spider-Man. That's the reality. And I'm going to continue to be the best one I can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
I just like thinking about the the Earth 42 stuff and all of how that stuff changed and everything. I don't fully understand. So they brought the spider over.
Yeah, I guess so. In the first movie, they're like Kingpin's working on that super collider or whatever, and I guess it just sucked it in from a different reality and brought it to theirs.
So it sucked in that spider from Earth 42 right as it was about to bite Miles, and then probably that spider was like, I have to go bite Miles Morales. So then it bit Miles Morales, and then is that what set the so the spider getting sucked over, is that what set the events of the plot off? Is that what also brought the other Spider-Man over to start? Because Gwen Stacy was already there, right?
So I think they just got
he meets
sucked
her.
in with the
He meets
super
her at
collider
school
too.
a couple days before all of that happens, and it was a time thing, also, kind of. I think.
Oh yeah,
I
they
don't
did
know.
say.
I don't know. Maybe not.
It's so easy to do time science hand wavy stuff.
I know
for plot relevance.
And it's so frustrating for my brain.
I feel like you as a Doctor Who fan should be super on the nose with this stuff. You should just look at it and be like, oh, this is a classic 11th Doctor situation.
Yeah. So Peter throws the bagel at Spot, and that's what creates Spot or something like that. Or that's not what creates him, but that's why he hates Spider-Man.
It was funny in a Mysterio worked for Iron Man all along kind of way, that he was in the background in the first movie and was no one noticed me.
Oh, well, I thought it was so funny, and especially since every time we talk about Spider-Man getting in a fight, all we talk about is how he's making jokes the entire time. And I thought Spot had a perfect line where he was like, I was just a throwaway joke that you made in the last one, because he just throws a bagel at him and he says something and makes a throwaway joke, and I just thought that was perfect. I'm like, yeah, Spider-Man, there's consequences to you making fun of everything all the time,
Yeah, and
this
Spot
is serious.
Being a little silly dude during that first fight kind of felt like his equal opposite,
Yeah. I like them a lot. Let's see. Gosh, who we haven't talked about at all?
Who's that?
HOBIE Brown.
Oh my God. So I thought about getting on the pod in my skin tight, full body Spider Punk suit and having my Spider Punk Pop Funko from my desk at work handy and having the Spider Punk statue model thing that my wife got me
You
and all my
have a
Spider Punk comics.
I did not know that you have all the Spider Punk stuff.
Dude, yes, I've been on that train. I've been on that bandwagon. And look at this. My boy is thriving.
So did it live up to the hype? Are you pleased with the depiction?
Yeah. Yeah. To say the least. That was the character I was talking about earlier where I was like, oh God, I can see them just having him be in the background and just kind of be this goofy character that like is supposed to look cool, but definitely doesn't. No, they made him like a 3-dimensional character, and I think he came out looking better.
Gosh, he's awesome.
He came out looking better in this movie than just about anyone, besides maybe Miles.
He talks about fighting fascists. He hates the AM. He hates the PM.
Yes,
that's like Prime Minister. Also, Zach.
Yes, that's what the double entendre is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it was great.
He's the first one to realize like Miles needs help and he's up against this big organization that is kind of lost sight of how to actually do good. And he's just throwing. I used to do this as in high school. I was an idiot. My friends and I would have bonfires and I would just take like live bullets and throw them in the bonfire and just kind of freak everyone out. And they never
What would happen?
They don't shoot out. Like, because they're not in a barrel of a gun. They just kind of pop. But I would not recommend anyone doing that. That was like some pretty dumb behavior. But that's him. He's like going in and just throwing bullets in the fire.
That's funny. Did you notice there's a couple things about him? Gosh, I'm trying to think of like why I was crying so much during this movie. I'm trying to like think of the scenes from when I did, and I'm having kind of a hard time even remembering them. But a couple things about Spider-Punk. One, first, I should say, did you notice when Miles is like trapped in the force field or whatever, he like goes up to him and like he does this and says palms. And he like reminds him that he's got to use his palms instead of just his fingertips, which he's the one that told him that earlier, but then he reminds him of it again.
He's so sneaky smart. Like
you're about to say the other thing I was about to say.
I was just going to say he's constantly like helping Miles in ways that no one else will notice or understand, so he doesn't like, arise suspicion.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I didn't notice this at like watching it, I saw it later on, so I won't take credit, but he's picking things off of all of the different things, and we think he's just like being like a Spider-Punk, like doesn't even do anything, this is just like paint, whatever it's called, and he's building another teleportation thing for Miles that he gives him at the end. So he's stealing all these parts throughout the movie, and then assumingly that's how he makes like the extra watch at the end. Yes,
you think he's like a Spider-Man because he got bit, he's got superpowers, he's kind of athletic, he hates crime, whatever. No, he's like a Spider-Man because he's got that like scientific and strategic mind.
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
Love him.
He probably was my favorite. And then we actually read about Hobie Brown a little bit. Should we? And I thought Zach made me read comics again. We read like 6 pages introducing Hobie Brown to the Spider-Verse,
and they're fun 6 pages, right?
They are definitely fun. President Norman Osborn has like an army of like Venoms, and they are defeated by the power of Punk. And this is 2015. Did you catch what President Osborn is saying?
I'm trying to pull it up, but my phone is kind of acting silly. He says something like "making America great again."
Said we're gonna make it. Yeah, yep, exactly. And I had to look it up, and Donald Trump had trademarked it at that point. He actually trademarked that back in like 2012. But it turns out a lot of presidents have said that before. Specifically, Ronald Reagan was known for saying that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's like a Reagan thing, not even a Trump thing.
Well, even as far back as Hitler, he would say some version of like "Make Germany Great Again," and it goes back to that the myth that he wanted to create of like historical greatness, and you know.
Should we add Hitler to our Mount Rushmore of pieces of work?
I mean, I think inherently, if anytime you're making a list of bad people, Hitler starts out in the inaugural class.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was we're not going to go like page by page, note by note, but this was just for anyone wondering. This was Hobie's origin story in Spider-Verse issue 2. Written by Jed MacKay and art by Sheldon Vella. And Jed MacKay is actually one of my favorite writers. He doesn't have like an ongoing Spider-Man book or anything, but he wrote this, which obviously I love, and then Mary Jane and Black Cat is just like the funnest little thing ever, and he wrote that.
Huh. Yeah, this Spider-Verse stuff, I was thinking, oh, that'd be fun to read and get into.
Yeah. So again, in this comic, Norman Osborn is the president of this like dystopian future, or not future, but like alternate Earth, and he actually looks like Ronald Reagan for a split second, and then you see that he's like been absorbed by the Venom symbiote or has taken it on or something, and
No, it's like something that they made though. Right?
Okay, he made the Venom in this world, and he assumes its form, and he's got an army, and Spider-Man has an army, and he's got his buddy.
Oh my gosh, this is the same issue. I'm just flipping through the pages. This is the same issue with like Spider-Rex, and you do just legit see this like Spider-Man dinosaur just flipping around in prehistoric times, like fighting other like a Green Goblin dinosaur.
Dude, Spider-Verse was wild. Honestly, the main story, in my opinion, isn't as fun as these issues that like kick it off, where you're just meeting, like in one issue, you'll meet like 5 or 6 different Spider-Men and see their deal. There's awesome. A Spider-Man that you think is like totally normal. You think he's just a regular Spider-Man. And the twist at the end is that he lives on the moon. And like New York City was on the moon the whole time.
Oh, where? I'm trying to read. Oh, whoops. I'm in the wrong thing. Oh, I was in 2022. That's why I was seeing all of these Spider-Verse people who were like in the movies. I was like, wow, these are all the people from the movies. And it's the one that was written just like a year ago.
Yeah. But another thing. So we didn't, I'll talk about the things that I think matter for Hobie in the comics that I was hoping they would take over to the movie that we didn't cover in this issue is later in the Spider-Verse event. This was where I started to really like him. Like, obviously I liked his character design and stuff, but he has a moment where I have a screenshot of it on my phone. Someone yells at him, Spider-Punk, and he just says, it's Spider-Man. So he doesn't even like being called Spider-Punk. The company, Marvel, calls him that for like IP purposes. But in his mind, he's not the derivative, punk form of someone else. He's like his own person.
Yeah. This dude's awesome. He says that was the day I want to do a British accent, but I can't. Or
that's okay.
Cockney or whatever.
No,
that was the day we took America back from the ones who would crush us under their boots.
Yeah. So that was part of the reason why I didn't think I was going to like him in the movie is they made him British. And I thought
my gosh, no way. That's perfect. That's like a perfect punk rock kind of guy, I think.
That's what everyone... I got into arguments on Twitter with people about this, and they're like, but what country started punk rock? And I was like, if you think I'm about to say the answer is the UK, you're wrong, because...
Wasn't it the Sex Pistols? Whenever you think of anarchy, you think of the Sex Pistols, right? That's just like word association.
Right. But
Anarchy in the UK, Zach.
I know. So that was their first single. That came out in 76. It came out a few months after Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones from New York came out, which is
that's
considered
a fun jaunt.
It's considered the first punk song. And here's the other thing. The Ramones and Spider-Man have always been tied together because they're from Forest Hills, Queens. Peter Parker lives in Forest Hills, Queens. They're the two most famous residents of Forest Hills, Queens, fictional or non-fictional. So,
now you would love to see Spider-Punk say something about that.
Well, that's the
Has
thing.
he ever commented on it? Yeah.
He's constantly referencing bands and making quotes and stuff. His universe is even a reference. It's Earth 138. Usually the multiversal designations don't mean anything. They just pick a number out of a hat. The Misfits have a song called We Are 138. And that's a reference. So that they named his universe after that.
Wow.
And the patch on his back that's an X that says FNSM.
Yep.
That is a version of the New York hardcore logo that would normally say NYHC, and it stands for Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So he's got the
awesome
Liberty spikes, which would look like maybe something from the UK punk scene of the 70s, but he's got that back patch, which would be something from like the New York hardcore scene.
Well, he could still be from New York. He's maybe just from like the UK, but he still lives in New York. You know, maybe he moved over and got bit by a spider or something.
I think they're just different people. I think the comics version is from New York and the movie version is from the UK.
Because you can't read an accent in a comic, you know.
Yeah. No, I think later in the comics, he's specifically like always been from New York, but yeah. I'm fine with it. If that was the main thing they changed, my biggest thing was when I saw them change that, I was like, oh, they're just keeping the cool character design and they're going to make him a different person. No, like for the most part, they gave him agency and a real character and motivations and stuff. So I was fine with it.
And is this in this fight in the comic book that we're going to touch on for another 30 seconds? Is this punk Captain America that's fighting side by side with him? Or is that just a hoodlum dressed up like punk Captain America? I think it's him.
That's actually Captain Anarchy. That's his best friend.
Now, is that just who Captain America is in this comic?
It is, yep.
That's Steve Rogers?
No.
Look at this.
No, it's actually... So originally they call him Carl Morgenthau. And then in...
Carly Morgenthau.
Does that mean...
That was the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That was in the Marvel TV show Falcon and Winter Soldier that came out this past year or 2 years ago or whatever. That's who was in charge of like the anarchy group that were the bad guys, were Kylie Morgenthau.
Wow, I never picked up on that. That's awesome. So originally they call him that, and then last year there was a 5-issue Spider-Punk miniseries, and inexplicably they changed his name to Carl Morning Dew. And I even wrote in a couple different times to that series, and I got my name published in the book, and they like thanked me in the final issue, and that was cool. But one of the ones that I wrote in that they didn't write was, I was like, is this a mistake, or are we supposed to like get some meaning from his name now being Morning Dew? Like, does that mean something?
That's funny.
The only thing I could come up with is it vaguely sounds Native American, and they might have been making a statement about like Captain America being an actual Native American.
I could see that.
But they don't say it explicitly. They say that he's gay, but they don't say, that he's Native American or not.
Okay. One other thing on Spider-Verse, probably the most negative thing I'm going to say about it is it did feel like the movie was cut off at the end. And specifically, I was watching it in the theater, and the editing is just so awesome. I'm just so ready for this fight between Spot, because Spot has like fully ascended, and Gwen shows back up and she's got the team of Spider-Verse people, I start crying, of course. I'm like, yes. And in my head, Zach, I promise you, I had this thought. I go, oh my gosh, this would be like such a good time to end the movie if this was a two-parter. But I'm so glad it's not a two-parter and we're about to see this fight. And it ended like 20 seconds later, and I was like, I didn't know that this was a two-part movie. I was just so psyched for this upcoming battle. And I think the movie was only 2 hours, and I'll go in and watch a 3-hour movie, no problem. So, oh man, I was bummed though. I literally had that thought to myself.
Well, the good news is the release date for the next one is only like a year away. I think I heard someone say
it's like not even a year, I think.
It's like the closest sequel that Marvel has ever put out.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like, that both of these were probably made like at the same time. Like this is very much a two-part movie, not like Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse was like one movie and then this is a sequel. This one and the next one feel like a two-part movie, like Infinity War Endgame kind of.
And I think that's how it was originally marketed. I think when they first announced it, they called it like Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. And I think they changed the name closer to the release date.
I did not know that. And I was like, yes, Gwen got all the old Spider-Verse people in here. So I'm really looking forward to the third one. I assume that it will be very, very good because they seem like they know what they're doing.
Yeah,
in these.
I agree. Oh, real quick, aside about Penny Parker, the anime girl. Do you know who her creator was?
Brian Michael Bendis.
No.
Oh.
Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance.
Really?
Yeah. He wrote her. It was one of another one of these characters that was like for the lead up to Spider-Verse in the comics. And I don't know if he approached them or they approached him or whatever, but it's like,
oh, that's cool.
Hey, Gerard Way, you've made Umbrella Academy and people love you for My Chemical Romance. You want to create a little anime Spider-Man girl? And he's like, yeah.
That's awesome. One other quick note. There is an Indian Spider-Man. I'm not sure of his name, but probably he listened to that one speech and that's how he got...
Yeah, and he's actually getting
influenced.
He's actually getting himself a little 5-part miniseries. So that's awesome.
He was awesome. Like the way he was like flipping around with his bangles and just like cracking jokes. I thought he and HOBIE BROWN were probably my two favorite characters. When he came back at the end in the final scene with when it was like HOBIE BROWN, whatever his name is, I don't know. It makes me think of like the Hogwarts people, Pavarti Patil, or something.
You don't want to get it wrong.
I know. That's why I don't know, but I also don't want to be like, I don't know his name. It doesn't matter what his name is because I can't say it.
It does matter. We just don't have it readily available.
But they were like my two favorite characters in the movie. So when they came back with all the people from the last movie, I was like, this is a perfect team.
Yeah, and they were like best friends too, which was pretty wholesome, even though they seemingly have nothing in common.
Yeah, I
loved his world where it's like New York is in India. That was a cool little world to see.
Okay, here's something else that I think multiverse stories, they get themselves into trouble with, and I know you can just like hand wave plot holes as like it's a comic book, but if Miles is not supposed to be Spider-Man and Miles is not supposed to stop Spot from killing the police captain in Mumbai, then that captain wouldn't have died because Spot wouldn't be there in the first place if Miles wasn't Spider-Man. So that can't be a canon event in Mumbai without Miles needing to become Spider-Man and explode the thing so then Spot gets his powers so then Spot can go over there and kill the police captain.
Maybe he would have.
See how none of it makes.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Maybe he would have died eventually
in another way, just
anyways.
in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you just have to be, is like, well, he just would have died anyways, or maybe, well, no, Spot wouldn't have gotten made anyways, because Miguel O'Hara specifically says the collider never would have gone off if like Miles didn't get bit.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I also want to address this little thing that I keep seeing across the internet. Everyone's like surprised that Hobie would have like a police captain that he was close with or something, and they're like, oh, actually, if you look at how his Doc Martens are laced up, it means that he's killed a cop, so maybe he had to kill his own police captain that he liked or whatever. I just want to go on the record and say lace code is the most fake, like, TikTok kid Wikipedia'd something and then just ran with it and made it seem like it actually matters thing ever. It might have at some point decades ago in like some regional place like New York, it might have mattered a little bit, but truly, I promise you, Hobie Brown didn't kill his captain, and the way his shoelaces are laced up doesn't mean anything. And if you know anyone who's punk or go to punk shows, the way they lace their shoes does not mean anything. Come off it.
That's like peak internet, something that you'd read.
All these TikTok kids are like, oh, I looked into it, and if you do it this way, it means you're a Nazi. And if you do it this way, it means
you're a Nazi.
I'm not kidding.
I laced up my sneakers wrong today, and the kids called me a Nazi.
People are getting so stressed out that they're like gonna do it wrong and get stomped, and it's like, oh my god, that's not a thing. You guys are just convincing yourself. Wow. Anyone ever looks at your shoelaces and it matters.
Yeah, that's one thing. When there was one line that Miguel O'Hara was like, "Save enough police captains." I feel like I've got a pretty good Oscar Isaac, by the way. He's like, "Save enough police captains, and the canon events, the world falls apart," or something like that. And if we even talked about what are the Spider-Man canon events, if we go back and listen to our episode 0, we talk about what are the things that are in every Spider-Man story. And the things we probably mention are bit by a spider, which 3 people in charge are not. You lose Uncle Ben, which also, I don't even think Miguel O'Hara did that. He lost his kids, right? He didn't lose a father figure. But nowhere do we see lose a police captain. I don't see that very often.
We just covered the death of George Stacy in our run.
Yeah, but he's like the only. I guess he's the only one because he's the one who always dies.
Yeah, that's the one for Peter Parker that would always be the case. Yeah. Or I guess in the 90s, Jean DeWolf.
Okay. And now, Mr. Morales.
Yeah, Captain Morales.
That's not his name.
No, it's not.
It's Jefferson. I think his name is Jefferson Davis.
It's Jefferson Davis, and I've always wondered why the hell they did that. For our listeners,
that's so goofy to name someone that.
A black man. For our listeners outside of the United States, Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy during the American Civil War. So he's kind of a symbol of racism. And I don't understand why, but our good buddy Brian Michael Bendis named, Miles' dad after that guy.
He must have had some reason to do it, because he also very consciously doesn't make the name Miles Davis, which I guess would be hilarious also, because that's like a famous musician. But isn't it because I read about this very briefly, but isn't it because maybe Miles' dad, his dad was like a piece of work, so he didn't want to carry on that family name or something like that, so that's why they go with Morales? I don't know.
I have read Miles's run, but I'm not remembering what you're talking about. It might be in there, and I've just I forget things within a week.
Um. Oh, do you have anything else on Spider-Verse? I feel like we've done it pretty good.
Yeah,
we've had a pretty good effort.
done it to death.
I'm sure that we're gonna end this call, and I'm gonna be like, oh, I wanted to talk about that.
And another thing, I mean, it's not like this is our last podcast ever.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, we're the bosses. We can say, oh yeah, we're gonna jump back to an old conversation just because.
Yeah. Well, if we don't have anything on that, I know it's just a bonus episode, so we don't necessarily have to do other things, but I watched something else that I was going to see if you watched, even though I know that you didn't.
What's that?
There you go. I was going to say, you have to ask. The new Black Mirror episodes came out this past week. Do you ever watch Black Mirror?
I don't. I've never watched it.
Okay. They had like 5 episodes that came out, and I was, but if you're not interested in them, then
I mean, I might. I'll be off all next week, so I might, look to binge something.
Well, some of them were good, and if you've never seen Black Mirror, I think that you might like them more than someone who has watched Black Mirror for like 6 seasons now, because, and now I'm gonna complain a little bit and sound like I'm like, hating, but Black Mirror used to like really make you think, and you'd like leave the episode and be like, oh my gosh, I have things to reflect on because of that, not in a deep way, but just in like a like kind of creepy way. It'll come back to you like 4 hours later and be like, man, that was weird when that happened. And that, and sometimes they have twists involved that you're like, oh my God. So, and then the stereotype of Black Mirror has become over the past couple of years, it's just like technology is evil no matter what, and it's like it was an AI the whole time, or it was a dream. And this season, it just felt like a lot of that, where it was a lot of like, they're just a spoil if you don't want any spoilers at all. But there are episodes where they're like, this was AI the whole time, and it's no longer. Or one of them was like, she was a werewolf, and it's like, that's not even real. What are you even talking? This is nonsense stuff. So, shows like that, Black Mirror, and there's another one called Inside Number 9 that I think is really good, that I've told you before is a really good one. So they used to like subvert expectations. You'd be watching something, and the whole time you'd be watching the episode, it'd keep you on your toes because you're like, what am I missing here? And now it has become, I think, the episodes very obviously lead you down a path where it's just kind of weird, but it's not subversive at all. Yeah. It's just like, this is weird, but I don't really have to think about what I'm watching. You're just telling me like, it's bad to be a werewolf. There's nothing else like going on.
Sometimes that's an important lesson, John.
I mean, I didn't know it before I watched it. So
yeah. I've always had this impression, just like from how people talk about Black Mirror. Is it like a mixture of The Twilight Zone and American Horror Story?
I don't really watch American Horror Story that much, but I have seen a little bit of it, and I think that that's probably a really good like comparison.
Yeah,
because it's definitely supposed to be like Twilight Zone-esque, and then it's supposed to put it in a really lame term, but this is why it's called Black Mirror. Is it's supposed to hold a mirror up to society and show like the darker like side of society that's right. Just like underneath all of the like pleasantness kind of. So, and there's some good ones. It's worth watching, but a better show that does the same thing as that is called Inside Number 9, and that is that's a British show on BBC that's really good.
Well, I don't know how to watch BBC shows, but I'll definitely
get a VPN, Zach.
Okay.
Sponsored by NordVPN.
You kids and your newfangled internets.
Yep.
I'll definitely check out Black Mirror. No promises as to, if it'll be like by the next time we've recorded or anything, but
oh no, I mean, you don't even have to. It's not.
It is it is something that I've known for years. I probably would like if I gave it a chance.
Oh, there are some episodes like, now there's 6 seasons. Each season probably has like 5 to 6 episodes. So there's probably like 30 at this point. And, most of them I would say are, they're all worth watching if you like that kind of unsettling type of stuff. But there's probably like 10 or 15 that are like hard hitting, like, oh man, that was good. Or like you turn that TV off after and you're like, that was bleep. Sorry, Zach. Got to do your edit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 15 out of 30, that's a pretty good success rate for a TV show. It's been on that long.
It's probably worth it's worth checking out.
Okay. Well, cool.
And the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who is November 23rd. So I'm going to let you know now, in November, we need to do some sort of a Doctor Who episode.
I've been telling you, I want the bonus. John explains all of Doctor Who.
Yeah, we'll have to do that like in November.
Okay,
we can do that before the 60th.
Bet.
Okay.
Cool. I don't have anything else.
I don't have anything else either. That was fun.
Yep.
I hope everyone enjoyed us talking about Spider-Verse, and if you guys watched Spider-Verse and had any comments, or you think anything I said was stupid, which is very reasonable, let us know.
Yeah.
Or if you think Zach said any smart things, which is also reasonable. But thanks everyone for listening, and thanks to Ian Hickey for the music, Alyssa Seaman for the artwork. And yeah, thanks for listening, leaving us a review, a comment. You can find us at the First Read Ultimate Spider-Man podcast on Spotify or on Apple Music or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And you can find us on Instagram at First Read Podcast. Send us an email at firstreadspidey@gmail.com or YouTube at Ultimate Spider-Man Podcast. See you next week, where we're back on the Ultimate Spider-Man universe.